Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to The Ghost of Molly McGee, Season 2, Episode 18. So, I'm unclear about what's happening here. I've been told there might be a hiatus coming. But I know there's one more episode at least coming out next week, or actually this weekend. Um, and that is, I do know it is a holiday themed episode. Is there going to be like a break, or like after that, and then it returns in January for the last part? Because they said before, I think that the last episodes of the season are going to be in January. I'm just unsure as to how this is going to go. If there's going to be a short break, there's going to be a short break. Nothing we can do about it. But I want to know, you know? So, just, if anyone can clarify things in regards to that, I'd appreciate it. But, we are back with more Molly McGee. And so far, like, this recent batch of episodes and everything, this, like, I guess half of the season in a way, has been a little disappointing. It's had some good ones, but for the most part, most of them have been just kind of okay at best. There's been no like really big standout ones, I feel. And I'm hoping that it just means that it's like kind of the calm before the storm, and there's going to be like some really, really big, exciting ones at the end of the season. But it's a little bit disappointing, if I'm being honest. And that's not to say like they're bad. It's like there's very few episodes of this show that I would actually consider like bad. It's just that they're not that great. They're not as exciting and fun and interesting, comparably, to episodes in the earlier half of the season or in the last season. And I feel like there's been a lot less, like, Libby and Andrea just overall this season than there was in season 1. They feel less utilized, which is weird because Libby was added to the intro. You would think at least she would be more utilized. But the addition of the Chens have kind of overshadowed the, I guess you could call them, legacy characters. Characters like Libby and Andrea and all are kind of being left in the dust for the new characters that were added in. And it's really disappointing because it's like these are characters that we've already grown to love and you're just kind of replacing them. I feel like adding in new characters is fine, but you don't want to have them just take the place of the old ones. That's not a good idea. That's not how you do it. You want the old ones to still have their screen time, and while the new ones just start to build up in the same way that the old ones built up originally. But it seems like they're just having the Chens kind of take the place in a lot of cases. And it's honestly just a little bit annoying. Like, I get what they're trying to do with the Chens, but honestly, they're just not as interesting. They just don't give as much to this series as characters like Libby and Andrea already have. So it's a little bit of a disappointment that we're focusing so much on them and taking away the focus from the other characters. Again, if they were sharing the spotlight, if If the other characters still had plenty of time to shine, it would be one thing. And don't get me wrong, Libby and Andrea have been in this season, but they've been reduced. Absolutely. Um, it's they have not had as big of roles, and considering they're basically Molly's best friends, that's really disappointing. Because you have like Ollie just coming out of nowhere and just take up all this screen time, and it's jarring, you know. It's just I just hope we get more with these two in this last set of episodes that we have. Whether or not there's a hiatus or not, I don't know, but I just really want more Libby and Andrea. And not just because they're my favorite characters, genuinely because it feels like they've been shafted this season, especially in this later half. So I'm just hoping that ends up getting rectified here. But I'm honestly starting to wonder if I should even hold my breath on that. And I want to make it clear, I still really like this show, but I'm not going to ignore a show's issues, even no matter how much I like it. I acknowledge that The Legend of Korra has a number of issues, and I adore that show. It's one of my favorites. It's like every show has issues. It's actually disrespectful to say otherwise. So yeah, Ghost of Mount McGee has issues, and this is a notable one. It's like you're gonna add Libby into the intro as if she's gonna be a bigger part this season, and she's less. She's a smaller part. Would have made more sense if you randomly added Ollie to the intro. People would be like confused, wondering like, what the hell is going on here? Who's that? And then when Ollie appears, it makes sense. That would actually work better because that's how the season is going. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Hopefully it ends up getting better. But for the time being, we're just going to get into this and hope for the best. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then it fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So this was one of the better episodes of the second half of the season, and that's saying a lot. As I talked about in the pre-thoughts, it's like, we haven't had, like, a lot of greatness with this. And I wouldn't even consider this episode, either of its segments, to be great. But they're good. And again, that's unfortunately better than we can say about a lot of the segments in this second half, which were mostly just mediocre. Not bad, but mediocre. The one big issue with these two segments is they felt like they were trying a little too hard to be like a message. You know what I mean? Like, obviously a lot of these shows, which are marketed towards kids, are going to have messages and themes and ideas to them that are going to, you know, help kids. I mean, I watch My Little Pony, for fuck's sake. It's like, I expect that kind of stuff. But I prefer when a show can do it, like, less in your face, a little more subtly. Because the way it's handled here, it's just kind of like really hammering it in. Um, and I think that's what keeps these segments from being great. Is it feels a little too in your face about the messages. That it does kind of take a little bit away from the overall enjoyment. Um, and to a kid, I don't think a kid's gonna mind as much. I don't think a kid's gonna care. Most kids are gonna watch this and not even think about the messages. That's gonna be an entirely subconscious thing that comes into their heads. They're gonna be focused on the funny faces and goofy shenanigans and stuff. Like, speaking from experience, no kid watches these cartoons for the messages. No kid watches these and comes out of it like, oh, that was a good message today. I learned to share. No, they watch it for the funny faces and the shenanigans, the silly scenarios that happen. They watch it for entertainment. That's why kids watch. Any kind of messaging that actually affects them is all subconscious. It's not something that they care about. It just happens because they end up witnessing it and their mind remembers it. So yeah. But with this episode kind of beating it over the head, it's kind of hard to just ignore it like that. It's kind of hard to see it as anything but. And I feel like a lot of kids wouldn't like an episode like this because of that. The only thing that saves it is that kids really like video games, and that would definitely help with that aspect. But to be fair, the video type of video game being shown here, I don't think kids really play nowadays. Like, kids are playing more stuff like Overwatch and newer versions of Mario and Zelda and stuff like that. Like, this game seemed like an old school puzzle platformer, which those still exist. There are very much still games like that. But they're not usually the kinds of games that are marketed towards kids. They're marketed a lot of times towards either adults, there's a lot of mature versions of those types of games out nowadays, or towards just in general the people who grew up with them. Even if they're not more like specifically adult oriented in terms of their content, they're still marketed towards adults because they're marketed towards the people who grew up with those kind of games as more of a retro style game coming out now. You don't see those kind of games like just for kids nowadays. Granted, games like Overwatch are not necessarily for kids, but the kids play them anyway. Because that's what's popular and everything. And once something becomes popular, all the kids want to play it because it's popular. So, anyway, let's actually talk about these. So, the first episode here, FONAA, Fear of Nothing at All, is an interesting idea for an episode. But there's only really one way it could have gone. It's kind of locked into it's locked into a very specific resolution that you can't really dive away from. Because the concept of the segment, of course, Molly gets cursed by Scratch to never be able to fear for a certain amount of time in this case. To not have any fear, to be completely fearless. So, obviously, with that concept, there's only literally one way this can go. For it to actually, work as an episode. And of course, that is that she basically tries to live out all of the things she was afraid of, ends up getting in way over her head to the point where it becomes dangerous, and learns that fear is important and that bravery slash courage is not the absence of fear, but acting in spite of it, which was pretty literally the lesson. Um, yeah, it went that way because that's the only way it could go. This kind of story is not new. This kind of idea is not new. And just like pain, fear is an important aspect of our lives that we require in order to protect ourselves. Now, yeah, you can be afraid of some things that it's like aren't really going to harm you for the most part. I mean, that's just a mental thing that you can't really help. But fear is there to protect us as an emotion. Excuse me. Um, that's why you tend to be afraid of stuff. Why people tend to be afraid of stuff like heights and you know, fucking guns. I don't know, things that would be dangerous. It helps keep us safe. It helps keep us protected from those things. So yeah, and Molly learns that. Like some of her fears, like having Heidi hairy legs crawl around on her, like that'll be fine. She'll be fine. But then you get to the other things like launching herself into the air with a trebuchet. It's like, yeah, that's going to cause some problems. And she's lucky she just got out of it with a chipped tooth. Like she could have, died or broken something at least. It's like she could have gotten seriously injured if it wasn't for Scratch basically saving her. So yeah, um, it was very in your face about the lesson, but there was some good fun with it too. Molly trying out all these different fears, kind of going crazy at points. There was fun for sure. The second segment here, Game On. Daryl makes a bet with the principal that video games are a team sport and that he can form this esports team for the school, and if his team can beat at least one game, then they get their esports team for good, and that he doesn't have to join like an actual sports team. And here's the thing. There's a couple issues with this that like don't actually exist in reality. Um, that kind of make this segment a little weird to me. For one, as I was talking about in the reaction, esports teams are very specific games. When you do esports, you're playing games like Overwatch, Fortnite, League of Legends, games like that, games that are built around a competitive online team-based gameplay. A game like this that's like local multiplayer, a again sort of puzzle platformer, that's not esports. That's not esports. That's not what that is. Again, esports are a very specific kind of game. The kinds that you see played in like big tournaments and everything. You don't see games like that played in tournaments. You'll see Mario Kart before you see games like that. And you don't even really see Mario Kart in esports. Again, it's more of those other types of games. Battle royals and MOBAs and whatnot. Those are the kind of games you see in esports. Esports is not just a team of players getting together and playing a game. It's specific. Um, so that kind of like took me out of it a little bit. But the other thing was, uh, a teacher can't force you to join a sports team, or a principal in this case, can't force you to join a sports team. Sports teams are basically the equivalent of extracurricular. It does not matter if Daryl is bad at teamwork. It does not matter if he doesn't understand it properly. You literally can't force him to join something like that as a principal. Pretty much the only things he could force him to do are academic related stuff, not sports teams. Anything that's kind of more extracurricular related is something that is just, extra. Um, and it kind of goes into the first segment too. The one teacher, like, definitely cannot give Molly detention because she's quitting his class. Unless it's trying to say, like, woodworking in this school is a required class, but it's implied not to be. It's implied that this is an extracurricular class that Molly was just choosing to take. And her choosing to quit and take a different class instead, I mean, if that's something you can do at this school, is her choice. Which, I mean, presumably it would have to be in that case, right? And if it's something that she can't do, then that's not a detention offense. That's more of like her just skipping the class constantly. That's more of like a in-school suspension or just other kind of disciplinary thing. That's not really a detention offense. It's like that doesn't really make sense for the teacher to give her detention just because she doesn't want to take his class anymore. Now, mind you, there's also the aspect of like, can she even drop his class in the middle of the semester? Because in at least here around where I've gone to school and everything, when I was like in middle school and high school, what we signed up for our classes at the at the end of the year. We signed up for our next year of classes, except for the beginning of high school. We would sign up ahead of time, obviously. But otherwise, we would, like, at the end of a school year, when we're going to be going into another one, we sign up for our classes at the end of the year. And that way we know what we're going to have when we come back into school on the first day. So we know what kind of classes we're going to have. We just have to know exactly where we're going to go. And you sign up, like, you obviously have your required classes. You have math, you have social studies, you have science, etc., etc. But you also have to have a certain amount of extracurriculars. You have to have classes that are more fun, and you get to choose them. You get to choose what you want to do. If you want to do like culinary class, if you want to do a language, if you want to do woodworking or something like that, or drama, you get to choose that. And I went through a bunch of different ones. I did a bunch of different things. I did culinary classes, I did drama, I did photography. Gym is a required one too. Also, obviously English, but still. The point is, like, you get that all of that set at the end of the year for the next year, so the entire year you're good. And then you're stuck with that for the entire semester. Not year, semester is what I meant, by the way. At the end of each semester, because there's 2 semesters per year. But I mean, one of them is at the end of the year, so. But like you have like the fall semester and then you have the spring semester, basically. But yeah, so it's like you have different classes for each of those. Um, but you keep those classes. You don't get to change them. It's not like college where you can just drop a class at any time. Um, I don't think you can start a class at any time in college, though I never actually tried. I never would do that. I have dropped a couple classes, but I've never tried to start one in like the middle of a semester. I don't think you can. But either way, um, so yeah, it's like I don't know like how that's supposed to work for Molly, but I don't think she can drop a class in the middle of the semester. Even so, the teacher's anger was a little too unreasonable for just what she was saying and planning to do. But also, again, I that's not a detention level offense. It's just not. Like, you get detention for stuff like throwing stuff in class or hitting a kid, something like that. That's more detention. And depending on the level of your offense, it depends on whether it's in school or after school detention. But then you have suspension offenses. Those are the more like extreme things. Um, and if this is the case where Molly can't drop the class in the middle of the semester, which she most likely can't, if it's realistic, then this would be her purposefully choosing to skip class. That would be more of a suspension offense, I feel. But I don't know. I don't know. I guess maybe it also depends on where you live. I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Michigan. So, I don't know. I feel like because Molly McGee is in the Midwest too, right? So I feel like it would be kind of comparable. I don't know. But, uh, yeah, the second segment did have Libby in it, but she wasn't like the most focused on character. It was like kind of it was a group episode with Daryl, her, and Molly, and Scratch. Um, and yeah, her thing did end up helping in the end with her being nice to all the NPCs and everything. That very much did help them in the end by getting them the extra muscle they needed to beat the boss. Um, but she didn't like really have like this massive role, which is a little disappointing. Like I want more like episodes that are focused on these characters a lot more, not just that throw them in just because they need another character in there. That's kind of more what it felt like, honestly. But I'm glad she was in there. I am. I am happy that she was included and that we did get more Libby here. Um, but yeah, the segments in this one were good, not great. Had some issues with them for sure. Some things that just threw me off and just I don't feel worked as well. But overall, I mean, I can live with it. It's better than a lot of these episodes have been. So, thank you so much for tuning in. Tell me your thoughts on these 2 segments, this episode of The Ghost of Molly McGee. And yeah, next week, I guess, will be the holiday special. After that, who knows at this point? If you could tell me, like, if you know, like, what's actually happening here, please tell me. I need to know, like, what's actually happening with the release of this series. Because Disney does not know how to release shows. So let me know if you know. But for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.